The atmosphere on board the Terran flagship was much different from my previous visit. The commander left me in a meeting room with 2 armed guards while he spoke with Terran intelligence about Ulah's treachery. He claimed it was for my protection, but judging by their demeanor, that wasn't exactly the truth. The duo watched me with suspicious eyes the entire time, never cracking a smile or saying a word. Thankfully, Rykov wasn't gone for long. I couldn't help but notice his face was creased with worry when he returned. Whatever he had just learned, I had a feeling it wasn't good news. "You're back. Did they say what they're going to do about the sabotage?" I asked. The commander sighed. Earth has bigger problems to deal with, apparently. My antennae twitched in confusion. What could be bigger than treason? They have to do something about the speaker. They agree that something has to be done, but she's on their radar for other reasons, he replied. She's been encouraging acts of violence against our civilians. There's been enough incidents the past few days that Earth has closed its spaceports. We can't risk a terror attack on our soil. Terror attack. I figured the phrase must be some Terran military jargon I was unfamiliar with. What does that mean? Commander Rykov's eyes widened. You don't. Well, it's a form of violence against civilians, mass casualty events that are planned, done publicly, and meant to frighten a certain group of people. The fact that the Terrans had a term designated for such an attack implied that they occurred with some regularity. I shuddered at the notion of civilians slaughtered in broad daylight for sole purpose of cruelty. For all the wars the Jatari fought in our early years, the violence was never so senseless. Yet the commander spoke of these terror attacks as though they were just something that happened, like a natural disaster. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Rykov scowled, crossing his arms. "Don't you dare try and act like that stuff never happens in the Federation." I shifted awkwardly. "Well, it doesn't." "That's not how I see it. You know our embassy in the Federation capital?" He paused, waiting for my nod. "Demonstrators stormed it, took the diplomats hostage. Now they're holed up inside, threatening to blow the place to the high heavens if we make a move." "What? Why would they do that? Humans have been nothing but kind to us. There's no reason for bloodshed." Try telling that to them. The way I see it, they're terrorists. But that's still the subject of debate back home. We should be taking the embassy back, not trying to negotiate with these people. They won't even talk to anyone. That's human. I could sense that there was something Rykov wasn't telling me. He cared for the people under his command and for the preservation of life in general, but never to the point where you could hear it in his voice. If this mission was personal to him, I needed to know why. He was a competent commander, but nothing could cloud one's judgment like emotions. I don't mean to pry, but I placed a hand on his shoulder and noticed the guards tense up at the contact. "Do you know someone there?" Was it that obvious? "Yeah, my brother lives at the embassy. He works for the State Department," Rykov replied. I frowned. "Maybe we can help somehow. What are your orders?" "Well, first they were to return to Earth with the refugees. I asked to join up with the tactical team outside the embassy, but was told, and I quote, 'You're too close to this.' The bigwigs really expected me to sit this one out. Orders are orders. We'll have to think of a plan after you get home." 2 steps ahead of you, General. I said that you offered to help and that you asked for me to escort you to the embassy. It would be an insult to the Jatari if I refused. And what do you know? Permission was granted. You lied to your superiors? My brother's life is on the line. I didn't lie. I just stretched the truth. That is the definition of lying. Not the point. Anyhow, the flagship will set off for the capital immediately, and the other ships will bring the refugees back to Earth. I won't force you to go, but I would appreciate your help. Will you join us? There was no question that I should accompany the commander. It went beyond owing him my life or considering him a friend. After the speaker's betrayal and the Federation's abandonment, the humans needed to see that they still had allies. They needed to know they were not alone. Of course, it's the least I can do, I answered. Rykov smiled. Excellent. Let's head over to the bridge and we'll warp out. The guards were at my side in a heartbeat, pushing me forward like I was some sort of cattle. My patience for the prisoner treatment was growing thin. I was keen on aiding the humans, but not at the expense of my dignity. I did my best to imitate Rykov's arms, crossed pose, glaring at the one on the right. Hands off! I'm taken! The man's burly figure was intimidating, and I had no doubt that he could pound me to a pulp in a scuffle. I knew my rebuke might only lead to rougher treatment down the line, but I met his eyes anyways. I expected an irritated look on his face, but instead, I saw the hint of a smirk playing on his lips. You managed to make Mick smile, General. Even I can't do that, the commander chuckled. Max snorted. That's because you're not funny. Hey, watch yourself now. Rykov's tone was light and playful, so I doubted his warning was serious. The general is right, though. He is quite capable of walking on his own. Mick nodded, stepping back. His partner followed suit, dropping off a few paces behind us. My thoughts drifted as we passed through the narrow corridors to the bridge. I wished the commander would have dismissed the guards altogether, but I'd settle for having them out of my personal space. If the humans still didn't trust me, that was their problem. You look upset. I'm sorry. It's actually not you, Rykov said. I have round. The clock security now. An anti-human extremist group put $1 million credit bounty on my head. My stride faltered as shock seared through my veins. What? Why you? He sighed. Because I'm the one who fired the nanite bomb. We fell into a comfortable silence as we entered the bridge. My mind was still reeling from the latest revelation. If there was $1 million credit bounty out on me, I wouldn't trust my own crew not to take me out. For the commander to wander about the ship at all, he must possess unwavering faith in his men's loyalty. On my last visit to the flagship, the bridge had been swept up in a chaotic flurry of activity and chatter, at least before Rykov called them to attention. But today the crewmates were already waiting at their posts, and the course was already plotted into the computer. Seeing the somber expressions around me, I feared the past few days had sapped the human spirit. All right, it looks like we're ready. Course is already input for the capital system. Rykov nodded with satisfaction. Engage warp drive. My stomach lurched as the ship slipped into hyperspace. Even after years of experience with FTL travel, the nausea never went away. Memories of newly enlisted Federation soldiers puking their guts out floated through my mind, and I laughed to myself. The commander glanced up from his holomap, likely confused what there was to be amused about at a time like this. Before he could ask what I found so funny, a stern voice crackled over the emergency frequency. Turn back at once. Unauthorized Terran ships are prohibited from entry to Federation space until further notice. Rykov frowned, pressing a few buttons on his display. Since when? You do realize we're a member of the Federation, so I don't see how we can be denied access to Federation space. Earth halted interplanetary flights earlier today, and the Senate passed a temporary freeze on Terran visitors in response. Came the reply, for all we know, you shut down your spaceports because you're planning an attack. That's ridiculous, Rykov protested. Look, we're here on a rescue mission. We're going to dock, and you're not going to get in our way. You are trespassing in this system. If you enter real space, you will be fired upon. What's that? You're breaking up. I can't hear you. The commander ended the transmission, shaking his head in disgust. Idiots. Raise shields to full power and enter real space. I felt the ship shudder beneath my feet as it emerged from hyperspace, and my expression morphed into one of horror. No, you must turn back. The planetary defense systems, they'll shoot you down. I'd like to see them try, Rykov growled. Well, this was just wonderful. It seemed Speaker Ula might be getting her wish for a war with the humans after all. The planetary defense system for the Federation's capital world was designed to ward off an orbital bombardment and consisted of state-of-the-art weaponry. This was the most heavily guarded planet in the galaxy, given its political and symbolic importance. With all of their firepower turned against a single ship, there was no way conventional shields could withstand the blast. I feared the humans had bit off more than they could chew. How would the Terran government retaliate for the destruction of their fleet's crown jewel? It was unclear whether they would stick to the concept of a proportional response. An outright declaration of war could be imminent, especially if the Federation fired the first shots. It seemed common sense from my perspective that provocation of the humans was not in our best interest. Earth was signed on to, and in many cases, the founder of treaties that prohibited attacks on civilians. But if pushed to the brink, who knew what they were capable of? Just a single nanite bomb dropped against a metropolitan populace. The casualties would number in the millions. Not that I would be around to worry about the consequences. In a few moments, I would be vaporized alongside every other occupant of this vessel. Gazing through the flagship's viewport, I saw an azure glow spreading across the lunar surface. That indicated the orbital laser was charging up. It was capable of emitting the same amount of energy as medium-sized star, at least for a few seconds. A hit that powerful would pass through our shields as though they were non-existent. Any hopes I had of escaping the situation alive evaporated. I thought they would fire the lunar station's plasma railguns or their guided missiles, as was typically the protocol for a space intrusion. The orbital laser was the capital's last line of defense, which seemed rather overkill for a single vessel. Was there any way to convince Commander Rykov to turn back? This is suicide. We must stand down, or we're all dead. I hated the note of desperation in my voice, which crept higher in pitch as I spoke. You can talk to the Federation later. Work something out. The commander straightened, the glint of bitterness in his eyes. The time for talking is over. We've tried talking for hundreds of years, and look how well that worked out for us. The Federation needs to learn a lesson in humility. Look, I agree that this is an act of war. If I were in your place, I would respond in kind too. But you need more ships and a solid plan. Our deaths won't achieve anything, I pleaded. He waved a hand dismissively. I'm not planning on dying today, General. We'll be fine. It occurred to me that Rykov either did not grasp the gravity of the threat, or that his recent skirmishes had led to overconfidence. Whatever fortifications the flagship had, there was no way they were designed to be subjected to such extreme forces. Warning: a target lock against this ship has been detected. Estimated time of impact, 5 seconds, a computerized voice said. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for permanent darkness to overtake me. The sound of trilling alarms rang in my ears, and I wondered if it would be the last thing I heard. There was no fear in my mind, just a burning hatred for the fools running the federal government. This loss of life could have been avoided if only the speaker behaved with sensibility. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My eyes shot open as a jolt passed through the ship, and I nearly lost my balance in its wake. The lights flickered overhead, presumably from power being rerouted to shields. But that was the only side effect of the blast I noticed. There were no fires breaking out on the bridge, no systems knocked offline. Shields at 96. Structural integrity uncompromised. Retaliatory action advised, the computer intoned. I couldn't understand how the flagship was still in one piece. That orbital laser was designed to overpower an entire formation. Yet it hardly scratched the Terran craft. All it had achieved was a tiny dent to their shield capacity. Humanity's meekness, and why they had hidden their true nature for so long, was more baffling than ever. Their vessels were nigh invincible, and their technology outpaced the Federation's weaponry by centuries. What was it that differentiated humans from other aggressive species? They could rule the galaxy, if they so desired, but instead they moralized and mediated. Commander Rykov cleared his throat. That was your most powerful weapon, General. You people need us more than you realize. I suppose nothing should surprise me anymore, I grumbled. What now? They're going to fire again once the laser is recharged. The human tilted his head as though weighing his options. That station is remotely operated. A sensor scan of the moon detected 0 life signatures. Yes, to my knowledge, I answered. Good. In that case, we're going to make sure they don't have the chance to fire again. He clapped his hands together, a predatory grin on his face. Ensign Carter, ready the antimatter missiles. I want you to bury that station. Understood, sir, came the reply from the weapons post. I felt strangely detached, watching a trio of warheads close the distance between us and the station. My oath as a soldier was to protect and defend the Federation against all enemies, and it seemed the Terrans could now be classified as a hostile party. After all, without the planetary defense system, the capital would be left vulnerable to attack. By taking no action during this engagement, I was siding with the humans, wasn't I? The missiles slammed into the lunar surface with a radiant flash, churning up plumes of dust and debris. Where a sophisticated defense complex once stood, only 3 craters remain. The aftermath was reminiscent of an asteroid strike, rather than a missile, given the magnitude of its depth. Staring at the fresh gash in the stony ground, I wondered yet again why the Federation was hell-bent on angering the humans. Creatures with such a mastery of destruction should be appeased, not aggravated, unless your objective was the eradication of your civilization. The low whir of machinery sounded from behind me, and I flinched on instinct. Whipping around, I spotted a robotic cart stocked with firearms wheeling across the bridge, and the Terran personnel gearing up as it passed by. Commander Rykov withdrew a scoped plasma rifle, and without a word, handed it to me. Its weight was much heavier than I expected, and my shoulders sagged as I accepted it. Either the humans were sporting some sort of power armor, or their physical strength greatly exceeded that of my species. General, I think we're going to have to fight our way to embassy once we dock. Between protesters and the Federation security forces, we'll be outnumbered, the commander said. You know the layout of the capital better than us. Any suggestions? I paused, tossing a few ideas around my head. Well, a diversion would help. Do you have chemical weapons on the flagship? I assume the protesters are packed close together outside the embassy, so you could hit them with some sort of gas attack. When the emergency hovercraft respond to the scene, you can use them as a shield from the special forces. I expected the human to appreciate the resourcefulness of my plan, but instead, he was looking at me like I'd grown a 4th eye. His mouth opened and closed a few times, as though he was struggling to find the words. We're not doing that, he replied at last. Please, forget, I asked. Whatever his problem with my suggestion was, it escaped my comprehension. Not only would it minimize human casualties, but it would also provide cover in a dense urban landscape. A wide-open avenue wasn't exactly ideal for ground combat and maneuvering. The flagship began a rapid descent through the planet's atmosphere, hurtling past silvery clouds. The computer's display stated that it had locked onto the landing beacon, and I steeled myself to face whatever lay ahead. As we neared our destination, I finally caught a glimpse of the ground below on screen. I had known that we would likely need to fight our way out of the spaceport before we could head toward the embassy. It came as no surprise then, when I spotted the contingent of soldiers filing into the hangar bay, weapons ready. However, I had not been expecting them to number in the hundreds and to be solely comprised of Xenic servicemen. This was no ordinary security force, and that could make our mission more difficult than expected. I just hoped Commander Rykov had a plan, because against a unit of that size, I didn't have the slightest idea how to escape the spaceport alive.